Many people, when you hear the word submission, you think lay down, you think, oh, I can't really be myself. I'm going to get crushed under some sort of oppressive system. No, it's not gutless surrender to man. Submission is courageous service to God where He has placed you to be in the earth. So let's look at three headings. This first heading that Peter gives us is this: for the Lord's sake. For the Lord's sake. Why do we do this? Why are we going to respond the way that Peter is telling us to respond? The answer is for the Lord's sake. He says in verse 13, submit yourself for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. This word submit here comes from the Greek word that means to voluntarily, willingly place yourself under authority of another for a greater purpose. And if societies work well, this is fine. But what happens when society begins to break down and you see issues going on in the world? This causes unnerving emotion for some of us. But here's what we have to note. Peter is not suggesting that you and I become blindly obedient people, especially to corrupt governments. It's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that if we will play our cards right as Christians, and if we will be Christ-like people in the earth, if he will give us his wisdom, and it will be a strategic mode of operation that God calls us into, and he will always promote his people in the land. But here's what I've found throughout history: when people take it upon themselves to be the great Messiah in their own mind, or some sort of salvific figure, and God, they end up trying to do good, and then when God is trying to give them favor and promotion, they've canceled themselves out because they took measures into their own hands. But if we will strategically surrender as God's people to what's going on in the world today and be obedient to Scripture, God will strategically place you and me and his people in places that he wants us to be in. We do not surrender to man. We are in a submitted posture because we believe in the sovereignty of God. We believe God sets up and tears down governments and kingdoms. So our hearts are surrendered and submitted to God. And all of this is for his sake. Peter's writing during Nero's rule, friends. So we think we might have it bad if we look at some corruption in government. We're talking about a man who torched Christians alive and used them as light posts. We're talking about an evil, vile government that had no regard for life. If you were in their way, they simply ran you over. But Peter, in this next section, still says to honor the king. What is he talking about here? How can you honor a man who's been so horrible? Here's what he's got in mind, and here's what you and I have to understand: that earthly king is not your real king. But depending on how you posture yourself in the world will determine whether or not you will gain the favor that we'll look at in here in a couple of verses. If you are constantly a nagging figure or a fighting opposition figure, well, that might not be God's plan. I think maybe there is a time where God is asking us to do more, but it needs to be in submission to him as the true king. Because here's what you and I have to understand. God can dethrone an earthly king as quickly or faster than he throned that king. And so when we are operating in conjunction with what's going on in the earth today, with who's in charge today, we look at them a little bit out of the corner of our eye and say, hey, I know who your real boss is. Like, that's the heart of a Christian in the earth today. Christians, you and I, have got to resist the urge to idolize political influence. Now, we need to vote. We need to be strategic in our elected officials. If you feel called to politics, go for it. Like I want this to be an active, powerful church, and the church in America needs to be active and powerful. But here's what I understand, and here's what Peter is preaching from. If politics, if power, if government, if believing that if you or your people could be at the top, that thing can grip your heart like an idol. Anything that has a grip in your heart and a hold to your heart other than Jesus can become idolatry. Any idea, any ideology, anything that you promote as your saving grace, that thing is an idol. But if Christ is there and He's got a grip on your heart, you can trust Him. You can know that even if it looks bad, He's got another plan. And He might be calling you and stirring you to be promoted in government in the earth. But don't let politics as a bystander become idolatrous in your heart and your life. Trust the Lord. Believe in God. Believe that He has a plan, even if it doesn't look like it. Some people are gifted to see the plan. Connect with them, help, or if you're a person that's gifted and going, hey, don't get discouraged. I know you see this, but have you heard about this? I've met people in my life when politics was blinding to me. I was deeply discouraged in the past few years with what I would see in the landscape. But I would talk to a friend here, a person over here, and they say, man, what are you talking about? Didn't you hear that this is going on? There's underground movements. There's things that are happening. So when we become politically gripped in our hearts, it can actually blind us. And I'm not even talking about right or left specifically. You can be gripped and blinded by the politics of the right. You can be gripped and blinded by the politics of the left. But man, if your heart is gripped by the creator of the universe and the king of the universe, there is no politics that will have your heart. And God will promote people like that to dismantle the evil in the earth. And God is always using even evil men to bring about His plans in the earth. So we be watchful, we be prayerful. We are people whose hearts are gripped by God and not the demonic principalities of our day. Here's what we have to understand from Romans 13:1. There is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. So that is one of the most abused passages in Scripture. People will use that to be authoritarian over people. People will use that to manipulate church people. People will use that to promote evil propaganda in the name of Christ that's actually detrimental to both the church and to humans. But here's what you and I have to understand from this passage of Scripture. God is trying to get us to see who's really in charge. He's not trying to get our eyes on people and be like, beware of those people specifically. He's going, hey, would you trust me that I know what I'm doing in the earth and you don't have to take things into your own hands? Our disposition, your disposition towards unjust government in the world reveals your trust or not in a just and holy God. Should we stand for injustice? Absolutely not. Should we be up in arms when we see things that are detrimental to human life and to the church and to the human flourishing at large? Absolutely. We should lament. We should be frustrated to a certain degree. We should cry out to God. And God we can trust to bring about the change that He wants to bring.